Hey, what's up guys? This is Neal Reyes and I want to welcome you to today's episode of Champions Minute. Do you happen to know anybody who gets angry easily but doesn't understand why? Well, we're going to talk about that today and how to overcome it. Get ready. You know, we all get upset from time to time, but there's a big difference between being upset and having what I refer to as an outburst of anger. Today's topic that we're going to talk about is something that impacts millions of people all over the world. In fact, it could be something that impacts you and maybe you don't like to admit it, or maybe others don't know it about you. Or it could be it impacts someone who's close to you or someone around you that you interact with. Today's topic that we're going to speak about is outburst of anger. Again, today's topic is outburst of anger. You know, we all have what I refer to as a natural set of emotions and what's referred to as a supernatural set of emotions. Your natural set of emotions are the emotions that you've learned within this world from either behaviors that have been taught to you or that you've observed of others and that you experience. But we also have a supernatural set of emotions. And those supernatural set of emotions are emotions that when you study God's character throughout the Bible, you'll notice at times He displays certain emotions and those can operate in you as well. An example of that is anger. At times in the Bible, God has illustrated to us in His Word when He's been angry or upset at times with different people or different nations or things of that nature. However, every time someone operates in anger does not necessarily mean they're operating in a godly anger. There's a difference between having a godly type of anger and then operating or just having a fit of carnality or an outburst of rage or an outburst of anger, a fit of anger, something like that. And anger can be a very destructive trait, character or personality trait to be around. In fact, I will tell you that although there are many things that can damage relationships around you, anger is one of the strongest emotions and hardest emotions to deal with, and it oftentimes can push the ones you love most furthest away from you. It can hurt those who are closest to you and drive them away from you rather than wanting to be around you. In fact, a lot of times people who have behavior issues or anyone who just struggles with anger in general, maybe behavior-wise, they're fine and they don't have any issues. But for whatever reason, they get angry fast. Sometimes the world has sold that off as having a short temper or quick temper or a short fuse. But could there be something more to that maybe spiritually we haven't acknowledged or recognized? Well, I'm going to tell you that there certainly is. And I'm telling you that when we work with anger, anger is something that we need to be quick to acknowledge and understand where it's coming from. You know, when I'm talking with many people, sometimes you see people throughout the church who always want to take care of the fruit of issues in their lives, but they never encounter the roots. What I mean by that is this. Let's say, for example, you had an apple tree or an orange tree. Let's say you had an orange tree growing in your front yard, but you hated oranges. You don't like the way they look, you don't like the way they smell, you don't like the color, and you think they look ugly in your front yard, and you want the orange tree gone. Dealing with the fruit would be every time the fruit comes to bloom and it comes to harvest season in your front yard, you go out there and you take every orange off that tree and throw them away, thinking that you took care of the problem. But when the next season comes around, guess what? The oranges come right back. Why? Because you dealt with the fruit of an issue and not the root of an issue. You have others who go a step further. They don't want an orange tree. So instead of turning around and taking care of the fruit, they'll take a saw or an axe and they'll go and they'll cut it at the stump and they cut it off and get rid of the tree. And they think as well that they've taken care of the issue. Now, we all know that different types of bushes and trees have different type of hardiness, meaning that even if you cut it at the stump, it can still eventually grow back from the roots because you didn't deal with its life support system. You only dealt with what you could see. Well, dealing with matters of sin or personal behaviors are the same exact way. If you want to get to the heart of a matter or heart of an issue, then you have to go directly to the root. If you want that orange tree gone from your front yard, you're going to have to dig it up, and you're going to have to find the roots and chop it off at the root to kill it at its life source system. Well, I will tell you that there's a way to go even further than that. In fact, when I'm teaching on generational curses that have been passed down from generation to generation, it tells us in the Word that those are described as a river of mud that flows down from generation to generation to generation. And if you know anything about a river of mud, when it starts at the top, it has a little momentum, but as it gets down to the bottom of the hill, it has a whole lot of momentum. It can cover a lot of things. At that point, it's not just wiping things out, it's completely covering it. It could be that the behavior issue you're dealing with in your life was a generational curse that was handed down to you from another loved one. In fact, it tells us in the Word that our iniquities travel down to the third and fourth generations, but our righteousness will travel down to 1,000 generations. What I mean by that is that if you have generational curses of anger operating within your life, anger, depression, anything, it could be that it was handed down to you from 3 to 4 generations past, which would mean that if you're generation 4, generation 3 would be your parents, generation 2 is your grandparents, and generation 1 would have been your great-grandparents. And keep in mind, they could have had it passed down from their great-grandparents down to them, and that's where it becomes a river of mud. Well, if that's the case, then you need to acknowledge that, and you need to ask the Lord to open your eyes to that quickly. 1, so you can address it and rid it out of your life, but 2, so you can stop it from flowing not only in your life, but to the lives of your future family members, whether it be your children or your grandchildren to come, whatever it is, you need to pray over that and ask the Lord to show you. Today, however, I'm going to show you about 3 possible roots that can be bringing outbursts of anger into your life. Now, these aren't the same necessarily for everyone, so if you're like, well, I deal with anger, but I don't have that issue, then great. But that doesn't mean that you don't have a root there. It means it just could be something different than these 3 that I'm going to teach you. But these are 3 of the most common ones that we see with people who tend to have outbursts of anger. The first root that we want to talk about today is unresolved sin or unconfessed sin. Unresolved sin is when someone has something in their life that occurred to them at some point. It was something that they knew was wrong, and instead of dealing with it, they have stuffed it away as hard and as far as they can. If we were to compare that to taking out your trash, if you have your trash can in your kitchen, and let's say you had some raw chicken the night before that you threw in there, it doesn't take long for garbage like that to stink. Well, if you get that and tie it up real tight where you don't think you can smell it anymore, and you take it and throw it in the pantry and shove it in the back, well, you may close that door and forget about it for a couple days, but the trash is still there. And the longer you allow it to stay there, the worse it's going to stink. Unresolved sin or unconfessed sin are sins that are in your life that you haven't allowed the Lord to show you and face Him with and truly repent over. Those are sins that maybe they were from a past relationship or a past indiscretion you weren't supposed to have. Maybe they were from something that you felt signals you out as such a bad person that it was outside of your character and you didn't know why you did it, but nonetheless, you did it. Maybe it was a weak moment for you. Maybe you turned around and you were at a hotel or a conference and you fell or something like that. Maybe it was you going out and doing something, breaking a vow that you said you'd never do, and you did. Either ways, those are what we refer to as unresolved or unconfessed sins. And oftentimes the best way to know whether if you're dealing with that is simply this. Are you wrestling with yourself internally? And what I mean by that is sometimes when people tend to get angry, they can be nice with everyone at work and they'll think they're the nicest person, but they come home and they're quick to blow up. And it could be because they're wrestling with themselves inside because they have this unresolved issue of sin or unconfessed sin. What I will tell you is that if you are a man, you should find another man, or a woman, you should find another woman that you can confess to and confide in. This doesn't mean some stranger at the bus stop you think you'll never see again. No, this is someone that God shows you, that He leads you to as a dung partner that you can confess to. Why? Because it tells us in the Word that we find forgiveness when we go before God and ask for forgiveness, but we find healing when we confess to another brother or sister. The second root I want to talk to you about is unforgiveness. That's unforgiveness either towards yourself or towards others. In fact, it usually deals with root one. If there is something in your life you have failed to forgive yourself over or failed to forgive someone else over, I will tell you that it tells us in the Word that God cannot forgive you until you have forgiven them. That even goes towards yourself. In an area in your life, if there is something that no matter how good your walk is, this one thing repeatedly pops its head up and continues to come up, it could be because you have unresolved unforgiveness in that area. And it could be that even though you've asked for forgiveness, God hasn't been able to step in and fully forgive you and wipe you clean of that because you haven't allowed Him to by not forgiving yourself. I know that can sound challenging, but let me just tell you, forgiveness is not about a feeling. It's about a knowing. What I mean by that is that, yeah, sometimes you can ask for forgiveness and feel as though you've been forgiven. But forgiveness is not about a feeling. Forgiveness is about knowing what Jesus did for you on the cross and knowing that no matter what you do, He loves you eternally. Forgiveness is not about a feeling. It's about a knowing. The third one we want to talk to you about, and is a very big one for people, is fear. More specifically, fear that has been allowed to fester. Fear that has been allowed to fester is something that people have unresolved issues with. And it's something that sneaks up on them, and it could be just through their word confessions. Maybe they spoke a fear into their life. It could be that it interacted with 1 and 2, the first root that I showed you, or the second root, and it was handed down to you, and now you're suffering from fear in your life. Could be that first thing I'll tell you is that people who I encounter who are fearful always have some type of strong confession in their life that they're afraid. They're afraid of this or afraid of that. Sometimes they'll just say casually, if someone turns around and says, hey, Margaret, did Bill come into work yet? No, I'm afraid he hasn't. Whoa, look at what you're saying. People might think that sounds wacky right there, but it tells us in the Word that we have the power of life and death in our tongue. Is fear a form of life? No, fear is a form of death. And people who struggle with fear can be so suffocated by it that it's as though they're kept in a closet and they're scared to even come out. They'll even be scared to pick their head up when they're walking in public because fear is on them so much. Sometimes they'll even be afraid to talk to true spiritual leaders or mentors who can help them because they're so concerned that if they engage with them, that person's going to see all the darkness and sin in their life and call them out on it. And I will just tell you that that's not how that operates. Forgiveness comes through love. Mercy comes through love. Understanding comes through love. It's the devil who wants to keep you wrapped in bondage through fear so that you don't connect with the people God has who can help you. Well, I'm going to tell you there's one way to take care of all of that. If you're dealing with outbursts of anger and you're dealing with any of those three issues, unresolved sin or unconfessed sin, unforgiveness or fear that's been allowed to fester, the one area you need to start working on within your life is learning to receive and operate in love. Again, the way you find freedom from that is by learning to receive and operate in love. Guys, I hope you found this teaching encouraging and a sure help to you. We want to remind you to go by our website at nealreyes.com and check out all of our teaching resources. You can also go ahead and find us on our YouTube channel or Facebook at Neal Reyes Ministries, or you can also connect with us on our Twitter page at Neal_Reyes. You can go to any one of those 4 resources and stream our teachings 24 hours a day that we've made available for you. Guys, we want to remind you that Jesus is Lord and He loves you, and so do we. Thank you, and have a blessed day.